Recording in progress.
The qualities of the levels and paths, and swiftly attain the state of Vajradhara. So let's do the 4 contemplations. The next one's the 4 contemplations, Iga. If you could put them, otherwise it doesn't matter. We can do them without. We can just do them without. Excellent, thank you. So we do it in English first, and these are very important contemplations for all of us. So, may all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semchen damje dewatang dewe jutang den ba jutik, dungal tang dungal chichutang drawa jutik, dungal mepe dewa tampatang mindrawa jutik, nering chaktang nitang drawe tang nom chempo lane pa jutik. So, good evening, everybody. And on this lovely night with more peace in the world, I hope. That was very good, Iga. She took over tonight. So we're going to do the application of Buddhism to Western psychology and psychotherapy. And this is part 4. So Chris, or any of you that weren't here, you haven't been for a while, just go back and watch the YouTube so you can catch up, because I can't repeat. But I've actually said that this section I'm going to touch alchemy and dreaming. I don't know how far we'll get with the dreaming, Halapam, but definitely let's do the alchemy, which I think is a very important part of the whole psychology. And then we'll go on to the dreams. And if we don't finish, we'll do it another time. We'll carry on. So I want to start with this lovely story. It's called The Ailment. So listen carefully. Lung Shu said to the physician Wen Qi, "Your art is subtle. I have an ailment. Can you cure it?" The physician said, "I will do as you say, but first tell me about your symptoms." Lung Shu said, "I am not honored when the whole village praises me, nor am I ashamed when the whole county criticizes me. Gain does not make me happy. Loss does not grieve me. I look upon life the same as death and see wealth as the same as poverty. I view people as the same as animals and see myself as the same as others. At home, I'm as though I'm in an inn, a hotel, and I look upon my native village as like a foreign country. With these afflictions, rewards cannot encourage me, punishments cannot threaten me, I cannot be changed by flourishing or decline, gain or loss. I cannot be moved by sorrow or happiness, and thus I cannot serve the government, I cannot associate with friends, I cannot run my household or control my servants. What sickness is this? Is there any way to cure it?" The physician had Lung Shu stand with his back to the light while he looked into his chest. After a while he said, "Aha, I see your heart. It is nearly empty. You are nearly a sage. 6 of the apertures in your heart are open. 1 of them is closed. This is why you think the wisdom of a sage is an ailment. It cannot be stopped by my shallow art." His heart was empty of all hardness of heart and inordinate desire. His ego was dethroned. Compassion remained and did not take up space. His heart looks empty because nothing of this world is in it. Now, I especially chose this story because it's a fascinating story. Because, sorry, Vian? Oh, I've got it on. Good for you. Sorry, much better. It's a fascinating story because it brings up the question of how we apply our Buddhist awakening to this life. Okay, we somehow have to learn to put this awakening into everyday life. We have to actually put it into our everyday. And if we are rejected by many people of this life because we are odd or peculiar to the very people we want to serve, then have we failed? Now, it's a very interesting thing because I have someone that I speak to from time to time, and this guy always tells me, he says, I can't live in the city. I can't live with all the religions. I can't live in the chaos that everybody else is living in. Okay, that was fine when he was a single guy, but now he's in a relationship. So it makes it very, very difficult because how does he apply this when he's in a relationship with somebody who's fairly conventional? It's a very, very difficult question because isn't it supposed to be, okay, that we're not supposed to separate ourselves on the spiritual path? If we've got that real deep heart, and you can debate this with me, if we've got that real deep heart, we should be able to put ourselves with everybody around us. So wherever we are, we should be able to carry that spirituality and not stick out like a sore thumb. You should be able to take your own beauty of your inner heart and pour it into people without people saying, she's strange, I don't want to be with her. I think it's really an important point in many, many ways, because we need to be able to fit in with the people that are around us without merging with them. And that's why I chose that story, because I think that when we look at the 3 levels of consciousness that we've been looking at, the psyche, the human psyche, which, Chris, is your ordinary human consciousness, okay, with all its facets. And then you go to the next level of consciousness that I was talking about, which is called the alaya or the substrate consciousness. And that's like the microchip where all the karmic imprints are, whatever you've created, and they come to the stage of the psyche. Those two interact. And when we come to the dream, when we come to doing dream work, you'll see how your dreams help you to understand that interaction between the psyche and the substrate consciousness, okay? But when you go right to the deepest level, or up if you want to call it, it doesn't really matter, then you're at primordial consciousness. And then you might feel like, what was his name? Lung Shu felt, okay? You might feel that you're just so different and you don't belong, but you need to be able, like a Buddha is never isolated from people. An awakened person is always able to see the primordial consciousness and the human psyche. He's able to see exactly where you come from and how you are perceiving things. Now, this is an art that when you come to primordial consciousness, you really have to do it. So when we talked about the 4 noble truths of the Buddha, the truth of suffering, the truth of the causes of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path to get there, when we look at that path, the cessation of suffering, it's to take you to a point where you are able to see things without grasping and getting totally involved in them. So last week, when we were talking about the 2 things we were talking in depth about, and you can get it on the YouTube if you weren't here, the individuality versus what Jung called the individuation. And we looked at those 2 really deeply to see how individual can you be? Do you have to, the individuation is your whole nature. Jung called it the self with a capital, which was totally different from the self with a little letter, because the self with a capital was supposed to be much more than the little human self. It was supposed to be really incorporate everything that you are. So individuation was when you really are able to attract people, when you really are able to be in your primordial consciousness, but you also can have a certain amount of individuality that we talked about, because each teacher has their own unique way. Each person has their own unique way. And what Rob Priest was saying was, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Even the Dalai Lama said, you do need a certain amount of ego to be able to negotiate these samsaric waters. But how much? And is the ego grasping the part that changes it, where you get caught into samsara? So when we were doing Kunta Zangpo's prayer tonight, he shows you how if you are angry, or if you are jealous, or if you are proud, or whatever you're going through at that time, if you have the poisons, he says, don't go after them, don't grasp at them, just relax in your natural state, and then they will be able to turn into the wisdom. So it's a it's a big question, because individuality isolates us from others. It's all me, mine, my friends, my family, my way. But individuation meets the universal situation, but still retains the uniqueness. So I don't know if anybody wants to say, because we then went on to the shadow, and maybe anybody would like to ask something or say something, because taking it from that little story that I gave you is really important. Yes, Pam.
Melanie, what do you mean, throw the baby down with the bathwater? I found it very funny, but...
A very good English expression. Okay? Because throwing the baby out with the bathwater means, when you bath a baby, when you finish bathing the baby, you always take the baby out, okay, and then you let the bathwater out. When the days where that expression came from, you were probably bathing the baby in a little bath like this. So you took the baby out, wrapped it up, and then you threw the bathwater. So when they say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, they're saying, lift a little bit of your individuality that makes you unique, and leave the rest behind. You can really, that's what they mean, don't throw the baby out. So we are entitled to have a certain amount of uniqueness. And we don't have to be someone that says to the guru, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir, just because it's the guru. I have lots of arguments with the teachers. I say, yes, but I don't agree with that or whatever, because you need to be your own individual self. But when you grasp onto that self, and as I said last week, telling you that the gurus don't see you with your stories and your crap and your families and your life and how you look, they're not really interested in that. They see deeply into your primordial consciousness. So I don't know if anybody wants to say something. We'll go back through a little bit about the shadow, and then we'll go on to the alchemy. Sorry, Tati.
No, when you're telling the story and you started talking about that afterwards, the idea that came to my mind is it was equanimity. So how do we connect? Because it's very hard, especially with all the conflicts we have all over, this dualistic perception we have, and how that can relate to the actual topic.
You see, I think it's really, really important, because how do you get equanimity? I'm sorry that you missed that prayer of Kuntazampo. Just mute yourself, because otherwise the whole thing goes off on the YouTube. That's fine. You know, it's very interesting, because I think you can only get equanimity when you are, what can I say, when you are satisfied to allow that universal part of you to come forward. Because I think when you are defending the ego, when you're saying, this is my opinion, this is what I've got, this is what I want, you can never have equanimity, never, you know. So I think that when we are able to differentiate between being in this beautiful primordial state, but still having a certain amount of individuality and your own ideas. You don't have to be a little yes girl and have, you know, and listen to everything. I think then you can have equanimity. But I think the minute you grasp onto the ego, then you're trying to defend yourself, you're trying to explain yourself, you feel aggravated with everyone around you, you can't see the truth of it, you can never have equanimity. So I think equanimity can only come when you are letting go of that ego grasping. I think it's really important, you know, because ego grasping means, hi, everybody, I'm Melanie. Melanie is very important. Don't argue with me. Don't disagree with me. Don't do any of those kind of things. How would I have equanimity? But if I'm in that individuated state where I can actually feel that beautiful Buddha quality through me, then I'm able to see a lot of other people and how they feel and what they want and with how they are perceiving things. I mean, think of it this way, the Buddha could see every single person and how they perceive. So when he taught with Vajra speech, everybody got it at their own level. Emaho, wonderful, you know, absolutely wonderful. He didn't ever use microphones. He never ever used translators. And he had thousands of people who spoke different languages. And they all heard it in their own language. Amazing. It really is amazing. No translators. So I think that's how we get it, actually. Any other things anyone wants to bring up? Oh, Viam, please.
Mel, so maybe you said that, but it's pretty much connecting with your own primordial consciousness, and then, well, for me, if I do that, it's like the natural thing is to then look through that view, and then see the other people like that as well. But just when I'm saying that, I'm like, I wish I could do it more often or the whole time. You know, like I wouldn't have problems if I can do that the whole time. You know, then everything. I think that's what we all want, right? So we're on this path, but so it's like reversing the whole time. It's like the natural thing is to be in that ego, and then dualism naturally arises. That's the result. There's nothing else that can be when I'm from my point of view. Dualism, poof. You know, you can, and no solution is going to come. But even if, you know, if I'm from the primordial, whatever, even as an enemy or something, I can connect with that and that person, and then compassion will arise, or understanding or something, you know.
Yeah,
So talking to myself.
no, I think it's really difficult, because I think that it's really, really difficult to be bigger than you. I think it's really difficult. I think it requires unbelievable training, you know, to be bigger than you. And you know what's even harder? You know what's harder than that? That when you do change and you do feel differently, then people still see you in the same way, the people that are around you. So for instance, sometimes my children will say to me, oh, you know, Ma, you always do this, or you always say this, or you know, some critical evaluation. And, you know, inside, I don't feel that anymore. I could see that I would have said that and felt that before, but I don't feel that anymore. I feel extremely tolerant of their views, even when their views are totally disagreeable to me. I think it's okay. And that's when you start going from individuality to individuation, where you don't have to get your point across for you. Patty, what did you want to say?
So, because what's the healthy way? Because we're living in this world and
Exactly.
we still have, we have to like stand our ground, you know, as well. We have to speak up for ourselves. Because what happened with me is that I spent many years being very nice to everybody and being a yes person and kind of getting walked all over. And then I spent a few years speaking my truth and just saying, setting some boundaries. And then when I did that, people accused me of attacking them. So now I'm done with that. And I'll see and and I'm done. Okay, I'm done.
If I give you a word of advice, just mute yourself when you finish talking. There's
Yes.
a product in the shops called Stay Soft. Okay. You put it in your washing, all right? When you're washing and you want your clothes to be soft, you put Stay Soft into the mixture, okay, into the machine or into your washing. Stay Soft. Now, what you've done is you went from that, the people pleaser, that was your shadow, into I'm going to say it as it is. Okay. Now let's put some Stay Soft into the washing machine and let's bring both of those together. And let's say where you support what you want, but you do it in a very genteel way. You sure-footed when people are arguing with you or really doing something you don't believe in, you do it. But you also add into it a little bit of compassion for where they are coming, a little bit of empathy, a little bit of understanding, and you don't give a dogmatic viewpoint. You know, it's an interesting thing because when you see people, particularly in these days, with political viewpoints. Now, one of the members of my family, not my immediate family, but my family, you know, around, has got really dogmatic political viewpoints. And when my children visit this relative of mine, you know, they hate it because they say you can't get a word in edgeways. And he's so dogmatic about his opinion. So when I see him, I tell him to put Stay Soft in the mixture. I say, you know, you spoil your viewpoint because it's so dogmatic and it doesn't give anyone else a chance. And you know what? Everybody leaves your presence feeling offended and feeling frustrated because they couldn't say. So I think there's a middle way. You don't have to let people push you over, okay? But you also need to see what the bullies are about. Because if you look at the bullies or the people who manipulate, they've got a very deep shadow side. And usually when I go deeply into the shadow side, they've got a whole history of, you know, what they do and why they're doing this and so on. So it's very, very interesting. You know, it's really very interesting because you can find a middle way. That's what the Buddha taught. So I think it's really important. Yeah, Mimi, please.
I think once you did mention to us, you know, for me, it's more like when you're talking to somebody and you know they cannot see that point, they can't.
Yeah.
So all you can do is kind of see where they are. You don't have to lie, but you put it in a way, your point of view, so that they can accept what you're trying to say. So as you say, with the Stay Soft and the recognition of you getting your point across, but in a way where they can understand.
Absolutely. And it's so important, this. It's so important. It's that point of taking the question mark and putting it on people. And that's what the Buddha was able to see. He was able to see, where did you come from? Where are you coming from? Now, for example, when Kisagotami, who lost her child, okay, in those days, you know, a woman in those times, in the Buddhist times, it was like your main role. You looked after the child, you know, you did the housework. That was your main role. So when her child died, she was absolutely finished and distraught. And she went running around everywhere. Then she heard the Buddha was there. So she came to the Buddha with her child. And she said to the Buddha, can you bring my child to life? Please, they tell me you are a magician. You can bring people to life. Can you bring my child back? So what did the Buddha do? He used what we call skillful means. He didn't say, no, this is the time for your child to go. This is the lifespan of your child. And therefore, I can't interfere with that karma. He said to her, go and find me a mustard seed in a house that has never known any sorrow. Okay, so she put the child down and ran, and she went knocking on everybody's door. Have you known sorrow? Have you known sorrow? And then everybody started pouring out their sorrowful stories and their losses and their bereavement. And then she got the point. So then she came back and said, now, please, would you bury my child, and would you help me to go on this journey? So he did it. He didn't say, no, I can't. No one can bring your child back to life. He merely showed her that sorrow existed everywhere, and that if she could come to terms with sorrow, she could come to terms with the grief of losing her child. So that's the kind of thing of putting stace on, looking where that person is coming from, and then giving them an answer, something that they could accept without being pushed over. Think about that and come back to me with it. So we were talking last week about looking at your shadow parts of your personality. That was Jung. So let me just give you the definition again, because we're going to go on to the alchemy. The shadow is an accumulation of dark emotional life no longer acknowledged and thus not addressed or transformed. That's your shadow. That's why Jung called it the shadow, because it just pops up at the least expected time. Hey, cut, pops up when you don't want it to. And we often hide this shadow when we're on a spiritual path, because we want to, we really want to create an outer persona that is perfect and good and nice. Don't know if that resonates with you, Iga. Creating this whole persona of being the religious person and all of that kind of thing, And this can split us, can create a lot of shame and self-hatred and feeling not good enough, okay? But the Buddha nature is never tainted by the dark side of who you are. One moment of knowing this, one moment of facing this dark shadow with a lot of compassion, and it starts to dissolve. Now, just to give you an example, I took one of Rachel Rehrman's stories. She was a physician, for those of you who don't know her, and I've read you lots of her story. But this was her story on darkness. And so I've just taken one of her patients and what she did with him, just to show you. So she's talking about this man caught up in rage at his cancer and its treatment. And he responded to the question, what do you think may be needed for your healing? Because when people came into the hospital with cancer, they were referred to her for counseling in addition to whatever they were getting. So she said, what do you think may be needed for your healing? And he answered, nothing. He was so angry. Taking his statement at face value, I asked him to describe nothing to me. Unending darkness, he said. Commenting on the power of that image, I encouraged him to close his eyes and allow himself to experience that darkness. As his face became more and more relaxed, I asked him how he was feeling. Again, these comments from my session notes are each separated by several minutes of silence. So this is what he said. The darkness is all around me. ... I'm not falling. It holds me. I am held in darkness, wrapped in darkness. The darkness is soft, almost tender. And he gives a big sigh. It's safe here. I needed to feel safe. I haven't relaxed since I got the diagnosis. And he sighs again. I can rest. I'm so tired. No pain here. No hunger. No need. I encouraged him to let himself relax fully. Watching him, it was apparent that he'd slipped into a light doze. I covered him with a soft wool blanket that I keep in my office. After a while, he commented that he could hear a sound like a great heartbeat. It was deeply comforting. I encouraged him to lean up against it, to rest. Soon he began to weep softly, and he was calling Mama, Mama, or whatever he was calling in this dark meditation that he did. I thought that was very lovely. And I think in a way, when we look at alchemy, okay, alchemy is an art of being able to go into that darkness completely and totally, immersing yourself in the darkness. And sometimes we're so afraid of that darkness that we absolutely refuse to go anywhere near it. So we do everything. We try and really, really, really go beyond it, and we really try and get rid of it in every way. But when we go to it, and that's what I was trying to say to you last week about the shadow, that Machik Lobtron, when she wanted to cross the river and there was this big demon in front of her, she dissolved her whole body. She made the fire. She became Vajrayogini, chopped up her body, put it into nectar, and fed it to the demon. And then the demon was no longer angry. So we need to feed that demon, and I want to do a little exercise with you tonight to do it. But alchemy is a very big subject, and I'll just tackle it very briefly. I used to love it, and now that I've got all my books back in my new home, it's actually wonderful because I've actually got a whole lot of books on alchemy from the days when I was really, really, really interested in it. I didn't want to take them and start reading from them. I wanted to give you my experience of alchemy, and then you could tell me about it, and then we'll do a lovely meditation. Okay, it's really, really important to look at this alchemy. Now, we call it the alchemical vessel, okay? And I'm going to read you from this lovely book by Cherry Gilchrist, Alchemy, the Great Work. And she puts, I wouldn't suggest you got this book. I've had these books for years and years and years. I'm sure they're even better books. But it's very interesting because the whole of alchemy has symbols, archetypal symbols. So on the front of hers, she's got the red king and the white queen, and they both have white sun and red sun. Very, very typical of these alchemical, of these alchemical things. I want to read you what she says about alchemy. She says here, alchemy is the art of transformation. She says the work of the alchemist is to bring about succeeding changes in the material he operates on, transforming it, and this is what we were talking about earlier, transforming it from a gross, unrefined state to a perfect and purified form. That's what we're doing on a spiritual path anyway. She says, to turn base metals into gold is the simplest expression of this aim. And at the physical level, This involves chemical operations performed with laboratory equipment. However, this is only one dimension of alchemy. And she says, since the base material worked upon and the gold produced may also be understood as man himself in his quest to perfect his own nature. I mean, aren't we all in alchemy? Aren't we all on a quest to perfect your own nature? I mean, that's what we're doing. We're trying to change Melanie into Buddha nature, into awakened nature. That's what we're doing with all the practices. So she says here, mainstream alchemy is a discipline involving physical, psychological, and spiritual work. And if any one of these elements is taken out of the context and said to represent the alchemical tradition, then the wholeness and the true quality of alchemy is actually lost. So she says, taken at its most simple level, this means that a scientist will find the alchemy of interest as a form of early chemistry. The psychologist will see it as a way of mapping the human psyche through symbolic description. Mapping the human psyche, that level that we were talking about, mapping it through symbolic descriptions, and the mystic will interpret it as a quest for divine knowledge. So the reason I always loved the alchemy was because these alchemists, they'd dress up in these clothes, they'd have these pointy hats, they'd create an environment in which they made a fire, and then they take the base metals and they took all the elements, and then they would put the base metals on the fire and use earth, water, fire, air, space, and they'd all go around and do all these mythical, symbolic things, and they'd add things and subtract things in order to get the philosopher's stone. It was called the philosopher's stone, or the gold, the true gold, or the true, as Jung put it, your true spiritual thing. So it was a very sacred and a very mysterious process. Jung revealed that the alchemists didn't only want to make perfect gold by refining and transforming gross material, but they wanted to resolve the issues of apparent polarities of good and evil. So that's what they were trying to solve, because, you know, people say, this is what you have to do, and this is what you don't do, and these are the rules you're not allowed to do, and these are the rules you're allowed to do. And they wanted to go completely beyond this with the alchemy. And it was a symbol. This philosopher's stone was a symbol for the eventual emergence of the pure spiritual being. It's a whole complex process. They had total dedication. They wore different kind of clothes and total, absolute devotion and dedication to the whole process. And they explored the possibility that we are able to change by placing ourselves in a therapeutic alchemical vessel, which is a secure place where everything can arise in the vessel without judgment. Now, how do you do this? When you go on a retreat, especially a silent one, you're putting yourself into an alchemical therapeutic vessel. And what starts happening when you're alone? I have experienced this so many times, I can't even begin to tell you, and I'll explain to you exactly. In alchemy, the base materials are reduced to nigredo. Nigredo is the black, the dark. So what they did in the alchemy was they added all these things, and the base metal became pitch black, okay? And then from the black, they would cook it and add chemicals and cook. So now what happens to us when we go into a retreat alchemical vessel is that we place ourselves in this vessel. We've got no other outlets except ourselves and our practice, okay? And it's not comfortable. Now, my first few days, when I haven't been on retreat for a long time, and then I'd get to India or wherever I was for the retreat, and you go into your room and you set yourself up and everything, you're exhausted, and then you go and you cook. And what happens? Anger and pain and ugliness and gunge comes out of your being if you really sit in that meditative process. It's not just sitting silently in meditation, because I'm going to add the practices which really help that. But the most important thing is that you've got to reduce yourself to the base, the negredo, the dark, all the things we absolutely fear. And so when you do that, I mean, I can only give you Tupten. I told you about him last week, that he always told me that when he first went into retreat, he said he was angry with everybody. What happens in these 4-year retreats, when all the people are together, but they go into their rooms alone, but then they come together, and there's nastiness to each other in the beginning, and there's intolerance of each other when they're going to have a meal and things like that. Why? Because the negredo starts coming out, and everybody irritates you. Their noise irritates you. Their things irritate you. And when I look at what I've been through in India, I mean, getting kicked out of the retreat after 4 days when I was going to be there for 6 months, or once I came to do a retreat in India, and I sigh a heave of relief, I'm going to start my retreat, and lo and behold, the monks are going to have a soccer tournament right outside my retreat room, a soccer tournament. Who would ever expect chanting monks to have a soccer tournament for 3 days? Okay, they shouted, they screamed, they let out everything. It was probably their alchemy as well, you know. And I started off, oh my God, another time I started off, and they were building just outside my retreat. So they were banging and clapping and hacking. And I thought, what am I doing? Up for the beautiful silence of the north of India in the Himalayas. They're building. But it was so interesting, because every time you cook in the alchemical vessel, that's when you learn to know yourself. And that's when you learn in the alchemy to accept the dark side of yourself and to see it properly and to actually change it, to transform it. That's what alchemy was all about. That's what the ancient philosophers did. They didn't only do base metal into gold. They did it with themselves, with all the right circumstances. And I remember when they were building outside my retreat room, and then I'm sitting and trying to meditate, and I'm sitting there and I look out, and the workman who's right outside my room sees me doing that. So he sits himself down on all these ladders outside my window and he meditates. Okay, so I looked out of the window, ready to kill him, and there he is. And he goes like this to me. Okay, he bows to me that I'm meditating and he's meditating. And that's when I realized that noise, it's my perception of noise. I can't hear the mantras in the noise because that's my perception. I need silence. I've come all the way. I have such a noise all my life. And now it's not noiseless. And that's part of the alchemical process, that you can learn to actually cook inside. So we're not comfortable what it brings up. We might want to get away from it, want to get out of it. Okay, the vessel of retreat helps create understanding that whatever is invoked needs to be allowed to be, not wrong. Okay, And when Tupton was in there and he was so angry in that retreat, and he said he was waiting and waiting and waiting for Ekong Rinpoche. And I told you this last time, when Ekong Rinpoche came in, gave him 5 minutes, and he said, Rinpoche, I'm like a volcanic eruption, help me. And Rinpoche said, just relax into it. And he said, is that all you're going to tell me? He said, yes, goodbye. And off he went, and he would only see him in about 3 months' time or something like that, okay? That's so important, because when you become tolerant of the shadow, of the dark emotions, when you are able to see them, confront them, feel them, have compassion for them, they just transmute back into their essence. So the quality of awareness enables the alchemical vessel to transform what emerges. Putting ourselves in the vessel implies we are committing ourselves to the process and are willing to stay with it and trust it as it unfolds. Okay, keep on the stove. And the spiritual practices that we do on retreat are part of it, especially the Nondra. The Nondra preliminary practices are the alchemical vessel. They make you cook. You can feel them. When you first do prostrations, you can feel the gunge coming out of you. You know, think of it. It's not that we're dark. It's just that we've been going in this samsara for eons of time. So we have to cleanse all of that. And we don't cleanse it by getting rid of it. We cleanse it by sitting with it, looking at it, and really, really, really feeling it. Now, when you do the Vajrasattva that I've taught about, and you can get it back on the YouTube, when you do the Vajrasattva, it really cleanses that. But you first need to come up. And always with me, when I go on retreat, especially when I haven't been for a long time, I'd say the first 2-3 days are torture, because I'm in the fire. And everyone who's disagreed with me, and everybody who's irritated me, and everybody who's done anything, it all comes up. And you have to have compassion, real compassion for it. So what do you think? Give me your opinions, and then we'll do a little meditation, and then we can start with the dreams. But that's really, I didn't want to go into much more, but I want you to see this as a sacred process. So remember back to our title, you know, applying Buddhism to Western psychology and psychotherapy. And it's really important for us to understand that we as Westerners have lots and lots of psychology, whether we want it or we don't, whether we've been going on a spiritual path that makes us into these good little souls or not. We've got tons of stuff in there, okay? And that stuff has got to be allowed to come up in a completely sacred way. Anyone want to say anything, or would you like to do an experience of it? Please, Viam.
Something you also said last week about in Vajrayana, it is seen that your the gunk and the stuff that comes out, it's like the manure, right? It's like that's what you want actually, because it's like the what's it, like a mirror reflection type of thing, right? So as I'm listening to this, so that thought, and then what we were talking about before is that, you know, that primordial connection with the equanimity to have compassion towards myself if I've been in the dualistic state, you know, and if I've maybe harmed someone with my words or whatever it might be. So you can always come back to that, and it almost feels like that's probably the main practice for me. You know, it's always coming back to have compassion towards myself, and then going out and humbling yourself by by fixing what you did, or trying to, if it's, necessary or, beneficial or whatever. But also this thing of the gun coming out, whether with non-dro or just being on the spiritual path over an extended period of time, these lessons come, and then initially maybe I feel overwhelmed because maybe I can't figure it out with my head. I'm trying to approach it from maybe instinctively approach it from the ego perspective, because it's just that imprint, right? It's just that kind of habit momentum there, and then it fails, and then something goes astray, or doesn't work out very well, and then the reaction comes, whatever that is. But when that gun comes, also not to like, I can be so also critical and judgmental of myself, and the way that I did something wrong, or I should have done it like that, and then that becomes a whole like obsessive kind of narrative, to just understand all of it. All of it is on the path, right? All of it is, but it's to have the awareness of that, I think,
Complete awareness, and completely be able to be absolutely compassionate to yourself. That is the main ingredient in the alchemy. That we're so judgmental of ourselves. Just put your mute on. We're so judgmental of ourselves that we don't give ourselves that chance. We just judge and judge and judge. You know how many people I do therapy with that I go like, you know what? Here's your whip. Just go stand in your room and give yourself a whip. Okay, here's your whip. You must have terrible, terrible scars on your back because you're always whipping yourself. You're always whipping yourself with not good enough. Look what you did. You didn't come up to scratch. You didn't do this. That's a habit momentum. It's a habit momentum. And we have to change that. And, if you look at habits, if you look at the 5 skandhas of the ego, form, feelings, perceptions, your habits, and your consciousness. Those are what make up the ego, that the Buddha said they were empty, they were interdependent. There wasn't something such as a real ego. Now, when you look at that, the habit momentum, if you look at the wisdom of perfected action, the skandha that goes with the wisdom of perfected action is the habit momentum. So it's so interesting. In one of my prayers, when I go, Om Amoga Siddhi I, flood us with your wisdom of perfection, and the habit momentum just dissolves. So amazing. It's envy and jealousy, but the skandha is the habit momentum that absolutely dissolves when you do it. So there are the ways and means of being compassionate and facing that shadow, and then the wisdom comes, because the shadow itself is made up of pure material. So the shadow is definitely not a shadow. It's definitely the wisdom, if you could see it in the right way. It's very interesting, Anyone else have anything they want to ask or say? Would you like to do a little meditation? Mart, you are looking very, very, very involved. I mean, are you digesting? Are you okay?
Yes, okay. No, definitely. Very, very nice subject.
Very nice subject. That alchemy is really a nice subject. And let's just do a longer meditation, because I want to go on to the dreaming, because the dreaming is fascinating when it applies to this subject. But it's a very deep subject. It'll take a long time. So I don't know if we should even do it tonight. Maybe we do it next time. But let's do a meditation, okay? Everybody sit in your meditation posture. And always see that your spinal column is straight, that you're bringing all the energy as you breathe in and out into the central channel. It's really important because when you bring the energy into the central channel, it's neither good nor bad. It just is. And I want you to take a deep breath in. As you breathe in, I want you to take in the fact that you are your essence. You are your beauty. You are your spaciousness, your openness, your blueness, like the sky. And you're breathing that in. And as you're breathing out, you're just letting everything be. Just feel, even sometimes as you're breathing out, just let it all out. All the problems, all the difficulties, all the things you're going through, all the things you're analyzing, just let them all be free, like balloons going up in the sky. Just let them dissolve. And do that a number of times, bringing the pure energy into your body and breathing out all the things you've been grasping onto in the day. And tonight, I want to give each of you an alchemical vessel. I want you to imagine that you are sitting in an alchemical vessel, cooking. You're cooking. Even if you're cold, you're cooking. I want you to see that the sun and moon are in perfect harmony, that all the elements are present. Earth, water, the fire of the fire that you're cooking in. Earth, water, fire, air, and space. Even though you're in the alchemical vessel, there is plenty of space for everything. Because the philosopher's stone, your true nature, is wide open, full of possibility, full of awareness, space for everything. The good in inverted commas and the bad in inverted commas. So while you are cooking, I want you to just, not in a harsh way, allow whatever it is that trips you up over and over again. You may be fully aware of it. You may not be aware of it, but people comment on it. It may be impatience. It may be intolerance for certain people. It may be abandonment of feeling. It may be a feeling of not good enough. It may be a feeling of I'm better than others, pride. It may be a feeling of jealousy of someone who is doing better than you. It may be your pushing self that always wants you to be perfect all the time. And when you slip up, it gives you a real hard time. Maybe that you've got to hang up about relationships. Maybe you don't like intimacy. Maybe you're scared of it. Maybe you have an aversion to all emotional stuff. So you never allow yourself to feel the emotions or say them. Maybe you are repressed. Maybe you always repress everything in your being. I want you to really, really, really examine your actual repetitive shadow aspects. You're in a safe vessel. You're in your beautiful essence space. You can really afford to look very deeply, however painful it is. Just look at yourself with no judgment. Find that which it is that you keep repeating over and over again, that people criticize you about, and it just happens over and over again. And when you've got that, or a few, if there are a few, I want you to sit with it. I really want you to put the question mark on whatever it is that is shadowish in your being. Put the big question mark. Ask yourself, what is this doing for me? Why do I do it? Is it hiding an even deeper fear that I have? Am I afraid of being let down? And am I afraid of what my life has presented to me? Am I disappointed? Look deeply. And I want you to shine your stay soft compassion on it. Like as though a child was standing there. And you were saying to that child, yes, I know just what it's like. I feel for you. Come and sit on my lap. Let me hold you. Let me nurture you. Let me feel you. I can feel how afraid you are. I'm here for you. Feed that darkness. Feed it. Understand it. You are in your alchemical vessel. You are safe. You can afford to look at it right deep in the face with total non-judgment. Just let it cook. You are slipping down right into the negredo, the dark part of you. And you're not even afraid. It holds you. It contains you. It relieves you to feel it and know it. Hold it. Let it be part of you. Let it come into your heart. No judgment. No negativity. The elements are perfect. You're in the vessel. You're safe. You can really afford to let all your neuroses, your neurotic fixations come up. you can feel them. You're nurturing them. You're feeding them. You're allowing them. You're not judging them like maybe some of your parents did. You're just letting them come up. And you're being with them. And you're never forgetting to breathe in so deeply into your essence, which is never tainted by any negativity. You have that Buddha nature, you have that awakened nature, and it's free, and it's unstained, and it's absolutely perfect, and the darkness can be held in it. Like that guy said, I can hear a heartbeat. I haven't relaxed for a long time. It's very comforting. There's no pain, just allowing it to be part of you. We really have to tackle that shadow and that alchemy. It's very important. And remember that your spiritual journey is to do that. The nondra, the preliminary practices, are totally given so that your dark part of you comes up. And when you do it in an intense retreat, there is no doubt it comes up. When the retreat's got lots of people, oh my God, they are so sensitive. They are so ultra sensitive. If you say boo or bar the wrong way, you get chewed up. I've got chewed up a number of times by people on retreats and things like that. But, you know, when you go by yourself, those early days, it's really scary when someone's not saying, do this in the morning and then do that and then do that. On these, you know, on these planned retreats, you get that. But when you haven't got that, you got to get up, do your practice, face your darkness, clear out. And I always found that after 2 or 3 days, I start having this lightness of being. It's like, you know, I can take anything on. It's such a beautiful feeling, but you can't do it without going into the darkness. If you go into retreat and straight away you're in a beautiful state, you haven't touched any of that stuff. Anyone want anything from me? Because then we'll go on and we could just start introducing the subject. And then we'll do. But does anybody want to say, Avril, you're off the camera. Yvette, you're off the camera. Denny, you're off the camera. Does anybody want to say anything or ask anything? You really are welcome to do it. This is the chance. You're all okay. Do this work. It's really important. It really is, because I think so many of you are so judgmental of each other that it's unbelievable. Of not of each other, of yourselves. Hi, Ed, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that thank you. This was a very important talk for me tonight personally. And yeah, I think that meditation we just did was sitting in the container, and the Negredo was I really it was wonderful for me. Thank you.
Wonderful. And you know what? You have got so many beautiful things about you, and I never hear you saying them to yourself. Okay. And it's so wonderful when you could start to see yourself differently. You know, I think when you know that everybody's got that shadow part, makes such a difference, because you know, people are always looking around and thinking other people are so perfect and so, you know, they're so wonderful on their spiritual path. There are very few of people who are wonderful on a spiritual path. Okay. I mean, it's really, really hard, because a spiritual path demands of you a lot. And then all your little dark shadow things come up, and you don't feel like, you know, looking at them. So you kind of hide them from everybody. And if people just spoke about their dark shadow side, it would make such a difference. You know, it really, really would. Chris, are you okay? Okay, because you haven't
Yes,
been
thanks. I'm fine.
But I really think that it's very important that all of you understand that when you go on a spiritual path, you never become a perfect human being. There isn't such a thing as a perfect human being. There's only a human being with all our faults and all our negativities and all our everything. And then there is a Buddha nature, or an awakened nature, if you want it. It's not a soul. It's not something like they say in teaching, the soul goes from incarnation to incarnation. It's not like that. That nature, that primordial nature, that primordial consciousness for very evolved people, just a little might go into that incarnation. Something of a Vajra body, or something of a Vajra speech, or something of a Vajra mind. I mean, a lot of these masters have 2 or 3 or 4 or a lot of incarnations all at the same time. So when you see that primordial consciousness, it's so far beyond what this little individual psyche drama is about. And when you get that perspective, you suddenly see that it's really, really not. It's not as we think it is. And you've got this beautiful part of you. And if you just do it a couple of times a day, connect with it, it starts working through this human psyche. And then you can find amazing things, because you suddenly realize, I'm in the right place at the right time. I mean, if you take every single person, even people who are in an earthquake, and you think, you know, that person left that area the day before the earthquake, and that person came into the area of the day of the earthquake, and both were in the right place at the right time. So you are in the right place at the right time, and you need to accept that. Pammy, do you hear me? Because you've got a real critic in you that I hear by some of your texts. Okay, and you've got to stop, because the fact that you're learning this is absolutely wonderful, but wonderful. So then let's just, I'm not going to, sorry, go on, Ed.
I know, I was just saying also the thing that amazes me when you say things at the right time. And when I was like almost not getting, I was at such a long day and I was so tired. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I'll catch this one up on the recording. And then I thought, no, now I'm going to go and sit, because I'm not going to see you for 2 weeks. But then you told the story about Kisakatani again with the mustard seed. And one of the ladies that I'm doing this training with just lost her son. And very recently, I think about a year ago, and you know, she's completely, and she came to me today to sit and talk to me, and we touched a little bit on Buddhism, and I told her about you. But then it was so incredible because she shared that story with me, and then I thought, oh, tomorrow I can share that story with her, and it's going to have such resonance for her and meaning. And it was so beautiful. I thought, now if I hadn't come tonight, you know, Because then I would have picked up, I would have caught up the lecture, but then the talk, but then I wouldn't have had that, and to share with her. So that's the thing about.
And you know what else you need to share with her from tonight, which is really important. Just mute when I'm speaking, and then you can unmute again. But you know what you need to share with her, because I have so many bereaved parents, okay? I mean, that was really my forte. I don't know why it happened in this life, because thank goodness I hadn't lost a child. But from day one, when I started counseling, parents who'd lost children came to me. I don't know what the reason is, but I think that a real heavy bereavement is the thing that brings out your shadow, your absolute shadow. And there was a woman in this building who sent me a beautiful cake, when we arrived in our place. And then I needed to go and say thank you. So she's definitely losing it quite a lot. She's repeated herself a number of times, but she just lost her husband 2 months ago. Okay. And so as soon as she saw me, she hasn't seen me before, but she said, Melanie, I'm so happy to see you. I'm so angry with him. She said, don't know why I could tell you. She doesn't know what I do or anything, but she said, I don't know why I could tell you. She said, I feel so angry with him, but I feel so bad that I'm angry with him. And I said to her, please don't feel angry. I said, it's a very, very normal response, because when you really have a tragic bereavement, the emotions are just set raw. Okay, they set raw. So they are absolutely like a roller coaster, the most unbelievable emotions. I remember when Kubler-Ross wrote her book, she wrote about, that first you have denial, and then you have pain, and then you have anger, and then you have denial again, but then people wrote books afterwards to say how many emotions you felt when you go through a bereavement, even not a tragic bereavement, but let's say, the loss of a spouse or the loss of someone that's young or something like that. Now, those, the thing that I always say to the people, the thing that I always comfort them with, because they all tell me, I feel so terrible about this, and I'm so angry about this. Why has this happened to me? And what's this? And what's that? So the most unbelievable shadow aspects actually emerge. And what I always did with all these parents, I mean, I've told you I had 3 parents who'd lost their only 2 children. And since then, I've actually had a couple of people who've lost their only 2 children. I mean, it's an unbelievable karma, to go through in one lifetime. But you know what? I used to always put my arms around them and say, tell me what you're feeling. And the darkness and the pain and the suffering and the lowness and the disappointment and the angers. Why did he have to do this? And why did this woman, she said that for the last 4 years since they took away her husband's driver's license, he refused to do anything. And that's why she's so angry. And I said to her, I can also understand his anger, because the kids took away his license. They took away his independence. So he just sat in one spot. And now she, after the bereavement, is feeling this horrific anger. And all I did was let her have that anger. I said, tell me about it. Tell me about it. Let's nurture it. When you nurture those feelings, and when you tell people you are so normal, going up and down and in and out, and this emotion and that emotion, that's when the shadow comes up. And then you tell them, you know what, you're feeling like this, but in a little while, it'll start to settle down, and then you'll see the purpose of this. You're either going to change completely or you're going to mourn for the rest of your life. And there's so many things you can do. Kisagotami dedicated her whole life to serving others after that. So she went and helped all the people who'd lost children. So there's so many things that come out of it. And if you're just there to hold the darkness, to hold the pain without any single judgment, it's so helpful. You know, I used to often, in my old house, not the last one, the one before that, we used to have like a lounge, and then they came into the playroom. We had a playroom for our kids, and that's where I counseled. And often I would find somebody sitting in the lounge, one of these bereaved people. And I'd go like, but you haven't got an appointment with me. No, Melanie, but I just wanted to sit here. Now, you know, in a way, sitting there was the cooking. I wasn't available. I was busy counseling and everything, so they didn't even have me. But they were sitting in my space, in a space where they felt totally accepted and totally, you know, totally contained in a vessel, and that all the strange feelings they were feeling were okay. They weren't being judged or anything. And that's the important thing when you have somebody that's gone through, because it's just so it's so painful. They just can't get over it. I've had people, I've gone into a couple of parents where I've actually helped them clean the room out. Sometimes the room has been left for 2 years with even the brush with the hair of the child in it, and they haven't ever taken it away. Like one woman told me, she said to me, I'm leaving it like this because in my mind, I'm telling myself that my son's gone on a holiday and he'll be back soon. And that's how I live. And I said, no, you can't do that. We need to clean the room. I've gone through about 3 parents where I've cleaned out the room with them, and the tears and the stories and the pain. But all of that brings us to a beautiful state, because out of all that darkness comes compassion like no other compassion in the world. So let's end for tonight. Now, I am going away I will be away for 2 Tuesdays, okay? This was made long, long ago. I'm sorry to even leave my home, but I'm going to be away for 2 Tuesdays. Now, Kathy is quite willing, if you want, next week, to take you through her mindfulness body meditation, okay, which goes through every aspect of your body, and do a whole meditation and then a discussion on it if you'd like to. So let me know if you'd like that, or you'd rather just take the next 2 weeks and just listen to YouTubes. It's a very busy time of the year, but Kathy's prepared to do it, and I think I've got a way to do the Zoom because I spoke to Cameron. I'll tell you about it. So let's dedicate tonight, and then when you come back, when we come back, I want to give you really dreams, Tibetan dream yoga, and different levels of consciousness and different types of dreams that relate to all the different levels of consciousness. I think that this is, I've done lots of it before, but I think it's very relevant to this subject. So I want to take 1 or 2 sessions to really give you, so that all of you can use your dreams to understand all these different levels of consciousness. So in these next 2 weeks, whatever you decide you want to do, please write down your dreams as well, so that we can use them. Okay. So Iga, if you can give us the dedication, doesn't matter. Beautiful. Iga, bravo, you're amazing. Okay. So let's dedicate all, if there's any merit from all this teaching, especially to all the people who are in pain, to all the people who are in darkness, we dedicate. to all the people who've come back from terror activities, to all the people who have been imprisoned and let out, to all the people who are in the middle of wars, who've lost their homes. If there's any merit, let's dedicate it to all of these people. And through this merit, may all beings attain omniscience, may all obscurations fall away from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. Sonam diye tamche zipane topne nepe dranam tamshene jega nachi balak dropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho.